Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different and tried out this painting that I did today morning and turned it into a speed painting. I wanted to talk a bit about the process that I did while doing this painting and why I went for the styles I did and why I went for the particular painting technique I used. And one of the things I recently did was notice that my art lacked a bit of freedom in it. Like, it was too tight. Like, a lot of the lines I drew or a lot of the brush strokes I used, I kept them very limited. I wasn't exploring too much, and I was always afraid to try out new colors or take my art to more brightness. A lot of my artwork is very dark and not very bright, especially on the warmer tones. I keep them more towards the colder tones. And I wanted to try something a bit different, and I didn't really have a plan when I went into this painting, and I just kind of started doing whatever I wanted to. And recently I bought a brush pen, and it took a while off digital painting and took a break to just learn the brush pen because it helped me find control, since it's a very delicate tool to use. And watching people like Kim Jung-gi and Karl Kopinski and all that stuff taught me a lot about how these people value patience and mindfulness a lot more when it comes to art. They just get so focused into their work that they tend to not really care about how particular everything is. Like, they tend to just throw things out there and just decide how it goes. Like you could see in the painting just now, I tried to do the highlights before I even did the pattern on the skirt, and I decided that it just wasn't a good look and I wasn't going to be able to achieve the same kind of image I would have wanted if I went for that style. So I deleted that entirely and I went to painting the pattern instead. A lot of what I'm doing right now is just picking up objects or sections of the painting. Like, first I went for the coat, then I went for the shirt, and now I'm going for the skirt. And I'm just going to block out things with main colors, or mostly just the majority of the overwhelming color that I want to put in there, and then I'll later come in and add highlights and shadows as needed. One thing I was trying to not do in this particular painting was make it too realistic. A lot of my previous paintings also have that happening to them, where I start off trying to make something stylistic or cartoonish, and I end up making it too realistic. Even if it's like a cartoon reference, I end up turning it towards a realistic style. And I wanted to avoid that, because realism, as good as it looks, doesn't let me be as creative as I want to be with my art, and especially with my style. Something I've been trying to hone in on in the recent experiments I've been doing. Especially with the brush pen, it let me paint cartoonish and animated styles much easier, and I wasn't as locked down to realism, because with a brush pen, achieving realism is quite a hard thing, especially if it's a beginner like me who had just gotten the brush pen for the first time ever. So I tried to avoid that here, but you can still see with parts like the leg and the hands and all that stuff, I'm still going for realistic skin tones. I'm not trying to go too much away from whatever the original skin tone would be, and I'm taking the highlights and shadows already, which wasn't my intention to do in the beginning. But slowly over time, I'm going to try and change this, especially with stuff like highlights. This was something I learned recently, using the color dodge layer to add highlights to a painting rather than go in and paint the highlights in individually. And it helps out a lot to separate the highlights from the shadows, and especially to focus on them, and you can go back and edit them whenever you want to. And that is one thing I found very interesting when I did this painting. It gave me so much control over the highlights and the shadows. And you can see that when I do the shoes, which I've forgotten here clearly. Like, I didn't intend to go and do the highlights already. I wanted to finish the entire painting's blocking before I went in for the highlights, but I completely forgot about the shoes and the socks, and I went for the highlights. And I come back to it later and finish it off, and you can see me just switch off the highlights layer and turn it back on with no effort at all. And with the shadows, I just went for, I think, a multiply layer or a soft multiply. I forgot what it was, but I went for a multiply layer or a darken layer, and I just added some shadows through that. And as you can see here, I switched off the highlights completely, just that one layer, and I went in to do the shoes and the socks. And over here I had a bit of trouble when I tried to get the shape of the shoes right, again trying to not be too realistic, but it was quite hard. Like, since I've been painting in this realistic style for almost 3-4 years now, it was quite hard to like separate myself from that and try to like think outside the box. But I think I'm getting there, and I want to like do more paintings, or hopefully do more videos like this as I do the progress too. I didn't intend to do this as a speed painting video at all. I didn't even intend to record this painting, but I had done the outlines the previous day, and I wanted to record the shading and the painting later on when I woke up the next day. I just thought it would be an interesting thing to do, and once like I decided I'd do that, I just turned Photoshop on, started the recording tutorial, and I went for it. I had to edit a bit of it here and there just because I took a lot of breaks during this painting. It only took me about 2 hours, but I still took a lot of breaks in between, and you can see I literally took a break there where the pen just disappears for a few seconds, and I tried to edit out as much of that as I possibly could, but some of it stayed in there. And here I've finished working on the highlights for now. Like, I always go back in steps. So if it's like step 1 color, step 2 highlights, step 3 shadows, I go back and redo those steps again. After step 3 I go back to step 1, step 2, step 3 again, and I try to repeat those steps as many times as I want. And here for the bow tie, I'm just doing a very simple color. I'm not trying to do anything complicated, and when I start adding the shadows, it starts getting that realism look again, and I was trying to avoid as much as I could, and I think it's just too attached to my style right now and too attached to my painting techniques. I also tried not to use too many brushes. Like, most of this painting was done with just a soft brush and the painting brush I use, and any hard edges you see that are painted are mostly done with the soft brush, and I use the hard edge eraser to erase off what I need, like the top of the thigh for the light, for the highlights, and the bottom of the coat highlight. Those things were just done with erasing rather than painting with a hard brush, because I think as good as a hard brush is to use, you can get carried away with it, and so I try not to use it too much. And I'm just going in here retouching the colors again, like I said, 1 2 3, and I'm going back in for the 1 2 3, and I go back in for the highlights now too, and I try to touch up the shadows again wherever I need to. Like the shoes, I realized I hadn't done the highlights and the shadows, so I go back and retouch all of that. And I'm not very good at backgrounds. Like, a lot of my artwork, if you see it, like most of them lack backgrounds, and if there are any backgrounds in them, I try not to be as close to the reference image as possible, like, just because I'm not good at environmental painting. So I tried to stick to that a little bit more here. Like, I tried to do as much as the background as I could and pay as much attention as I did want to do for it. It still didn't end up where I wanted it to be, because it's not exactly like matching the style of the rest of the painting, but I think whatever I tried out, especially with some of the newer techniques I tried, it turned out pretty well. And I did the background pretty quickly because it was more of a last minute thing, because I was really conflicted with should I do the background or not, until towards the end where I actually wanted to do the background. And a lot of this, whenever I felt like something was going wrong and I felt like something wasn't looking right, I stepped away from the computer, took a break, came back to it an hour or 2 later, or even I went and took a nap and I came back later and I tried painting it again. And that helped me like see the style a little bit better, see my mistakes a little bit better, and like finalize a lot of things. Now, most of this is just a very loose style, and most of the environments in the background I'm trying not to pay much attention to. As you can see, this is mostly all I do in it. I don't even go and retouch anything. And for the painting, I go back and touch it up a little bit, because as you can see near the arm or the edges of the coats are bleeding through to the background. Like, the background is bleeding through them because I haven't colored them completely. So I go back and retouch it with the 1 2 3 step again. So that's mostly all about this painting, and I want to do more of it as I keep improving, and I hope to show you guys more of my work and learn from it myself too. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I'll catch you guys up again later. Bye bye.